Well, welcome everyone. Again, my name is Dave Ulmer, and I'm the Chief Product Officer and Vice President of Technology at EnergyCAP, and I'm so glad that you could join us here today. I don't know what it looks like where you are. Today in State College, Pennsylvania, we're having our first real snowfall of the year. I don't think it's going to stick too much, but it's a good reminder that winter is quickly coming. We're glad that you could be with us. We hope that you, your families, your coworkers are safe during this time. And although we can't meet with you in person, we're glad that at least we can connect remotely with each other through our session today. Today, we're going to be covering some of EnergyCAP's latest developer tools. We've continued to expand our development tools over the last few years, and especially within the last 6 months, we've made some new tools available that we wanted to make sure that you're aware of. The tools that we're going to be talking about today are available for clients that EnergyCAP hosts, as well as people who are running on-premise versions of EnergyCAP. I'd also like to mention that this session is being recorded, and recordings of this will be sent out to registered attendees after the fact. Let's jump in with our topic today. I'd like to start with a quote from Mark Andreessen. In short, software is eating the world. Now, you might expect a quote like this from a software company. What Mark is talking about here is the fact that software is everywhere, right? If you think about the work that we do and you think back to what you do now versus what you did a year ago, or 3 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, there's probably not a person on this call who would say, I'm doing less work today, or less is expected of me now than was expected of me 10 years ago, right? And it's not that we suddenly have more hours in our day, but if we use our tools, and specifically if we can use software to our advantage to make our lives easier and faster and friendlier, then we're going to be able to advance ourselves and advance our organizations. And that's what we're here to talk about today, how EnergyCAP software, not just the software that you log into when you record your utility bills in, but our entire software platform is really designed to make your life easier and, in fact, allow us to leverage this software so that we can all conquer the world with our different goals and aspirations. So here's our agenda for today. Today, we're going to be talking about how EnergyCAP's developer tools make it easy to enhance your utility bill processing and business workflows. And we're going to dissect that a little bit. And we're going to start by talking about how EnergyCAP's APIs provide a documented and extensible platform for third-party developers. Then we're going to be talking about how you can use API keys to easily access and secure your EnergyCAP data. Next, we're going to talk about how you can subscribe to EnergyCAP's webhooks so that you can automate your tasks and your workflows. Use software to your advantage, as we talked about. We're also going to give you some examples of how many organizations are already using EnergyCAP's developer tools to simplify and enhance their processes. And then finally, we're going to talk a little bit about the future and how EnergyCAP's APIs are going to continue to evolve and improve over time. So this is our roadmap for today. If some of these terms aren't familiar to you, don't worry. We're going to define them as we go along. First, let's start by talking about how EnergyCAP's APIs provide a documented and extensible platform for third-party developers. Well, we should start by defining some terms. So some common EnergyCAP developer terms, and in fact, these terms extend well beyond EnergyCAP. First is APIs. What are we talking about when we say APIs? Well, API stands for Application Programming Interfaces. And this is a common term that is used throughout industries to talk about documented contracts or instructions that accept requests to create, edit, delete, or retrieve objects such as accounts, meters, buildings, etc. Contracts to take an action, like maybe kick off some type of a process, or take an action like maybe approve a bill, or to kick off a process. All of those things can be enabled by APIs. Some examples specific to EnergyCAP. Well, creating a bill. There is an API in EnergyCAP for creating a bill. It's like a mini program, right, that you can call, and if you pass it the right things, it will create a bill for you. It's a documented contract so that if you provide the right inputs, it will take the action that you expect. You can also use EnergyCAP APIs to do things like inactivate a user or import bills. Uploading files into EnergyCAP, you can do that with an API. You can use it to run chargeback workflow steps or download a report. In fact, everything in EnergyCAP that you can do in version 7 can be done via an API. APIs also can change over time. They can be updated, and when that happens, we call that versioning. So if you've been following the history of EnergyCAP over the last 10 years, you may know that we're actually on the 3rd version of our APIs. We had a version 1, a version 2, we're on the 3rd version of our APIs. And soon we're going to be expanding even beyond that into some multiple versions that are active at the same time. So APIs can change and evolve as needs change. Maybe we need additional data to be passed in, maybe you need additional data to be passed out of the application. But there's nothing magical about API. It's simply an agreed upon format to receive data and send data back and forth between EnergyCAP and some other system. Another term that we're going to define is software developer kit, or an SDK. Well, what is this? So this is something that is useful for developers. It's a collection of tools that are packaged together to make software development easier and faster. So that instead of a software developer having to understand lots of different systems, we kind of make it a little bit easier by putting several pieces together and streamlining or simplifying their process. So some examples of what's included in an SDK. Well, it turns APIs, these individual contracts that we have to do things, it turns them into easy to use models software developers can just call and start using. And it also constructs inputs and outputs in very standardized programming objects. So a developer who's used to using a particular language, if you have an SDK for a package like EnergyCAP, they can kind of pick it up and start using it without a large workload or a large hurdle to overcome to be able to get used to certain EnergyCAP-isms. So APIs and SDKs, we'll be using that throughout the presentation. So I mentioned this a moment ago, but I want to underscore the fact that EnergyCAP version 7 is completely built on a platform of APIs which standardize data access, business logic, and processing. Every screen, every interaction that you use when you use EnergyCAP version 7 goes through what we call the EnergyCAP API platform. It's hundreds of APIs that are available for those screens to interact with your EnergyCAP database. But this is what's so neat. Yes, EnergyCAP, the tool that you log into, can use those APIs. But besides us using those APIs to access the system, you and your software developers or external parties can also use those very same APIs that we use to run the entire EnergyCAP application. You can use those to run your own custom processing. So here are some examples of things that might be applicable to you in your organization. You might have automation scripts that you want to run, and they can call the EnergyCAP APIs, or custom rules or logic. Maybe you're running building automation systems that can integrate with a system like EnergyCAP. Other third-party tools, accounting integrations, a very common way that people use our APIs is for accounting integrations. Metering systems and interval data, or maybe you want to get data out of EnergyCAP and integrate it with other business intelligence tools. These are all ways that you can use the EnergyCAP API platform to get your data out of EnergyCAP, or maybe to feed data into EnergyCAP as well. So where do you get started? Well, EnergyCAP's complete complement of APIs are documented at developer.energycap.com. And I'm going to bring this website up a couple of times today, developer.energycap.com. This is a website that you're going to want to pass off to any developer or third party that's going to be working with our APIs, because it's the hub for our information that we want to get across to developers. So different from our regular user documentation that's focused more on the business uses of EnergyCAP, this is very focused on the technical details of how you interact with EnergyCAP's APIs and SDKs. So what's available here at developer.energycap.com? Well, first off, we have a getting started guide for developers, something that walks them through from their very first API that they want to use, how do they authenticate, what kind of data format should they expect, how should they interact with our system. So that's the getting started guide. We also provide a dedicated help page about using EnergyCAP's authentication, so that they can understand how they actually authenticate with each of our APIs to make sure that they get access to the data that they need. We also provide information on there for our single sign-on clients who are hosted by EnergyCAP. So if you're a client who is either already using single sign-on to connect to EnergyCAP, or maybe you're interested in doing that in the future and we host your database, there are details available on developer.energycap.com for that. And finally, we have links available to our software developer kits. We have 3 of them available. One is really our primetime SDK, and that is our C# SDK. C# is a Microsoft development language, and it's actually the core language that we use under the covers for the business logic of EnergyCAP. We also provide two beta SDKs, a Python SDK and an Angular TypeScript SDK. Now, if you're a business user, you may be saying, I have no idea what this means. Your software developers will. That information is all available on developer.energycap.com. In addition to those resources, every API that is available through EnergyCAP's API platform is available and documented on developer.energycap.com. And when I say documented, what do I mean by that? I show you a couple screenshots here, but our documentation includes a full API list along with descriptions for every API, and they're organized by function. So billing functions are together, account functions, building functions, etc. We also provide a field-by-field description of items to be submitted and retrieved. We indicate the data types, sizing information if there are limits, and we provide descriptions for those fields so you can know what to expect and what to submit. We also, for every API, indicate what permissions are required by that API in order to use it. Just like when you create a user within EnergyCAP, that user has roles and permissions. Those same roles and permissions apply to the EnergyCAP API platform as well, and that's documented on developer.energycap.com. We also provide example results, so that if you call an API, you can see an example of what you should expect to receive back from EnergyCAP. EnergyCAP's APIs follow well-known standards. These are standards that if you looked at other large software platforms, they're going to be using very similar standards and settings. And we do that so that you can integrate EnergyCAP's APIs with other systems that you're already using, or maybe if you're using software developers who are familiar with coding in other programming languages or using other APIs, working with EnergyCAP will be very familiar to them. These are some of the systems, for instance, that you can easily integrate with EnergyCAP because we use standards-based APIs as part of the EnergyCAP API platform. So that's a little bit about how EnergyCAP's APIs provide both a documented and extensible platform for third-party developers. Next, we're going to talk about how you can use API keys to easily access and secure your EnergyCAP data. So when we talk about API keys, what are we talking about here? Well, API keys, similar to a key to a door, right? They simplify authentication with EnergyCAP's APIs. And the way they do that is they're a unique string that is a substitute for a specific username and password that can be used when accessing the EnergyCAP APIs. Essentially, we've transformed a combination of a username and password into a unique string that can then be used to programmatically access the EnergyCAP APIs. And it makes it very easy for a software developer to be able to get access to the system. It's a very common way for APIs to be authenticated. Each API key is created and assigned to a single EnergyCAP user. Okay, just like your username and password belongs to one user, an API key belongs to a single user. An API key should not be shared. Anyone with that key can act on behalf of the person who created the API key. It's just like handing someone both a username and be secret items. They're very long items that you should keep in a safe place. And software developers have different mechanisms that they can use to help keep those hidden during the software development process. API keys inherit all of the rights and all of the permissions of the creator. Whoever is the EnergyCAP user who clicks the button and says, I want to create an API key, the API key inherits all of the permissions of that particular user. You can think about it like going to Home Depot or Lowe's and taking a master key and asking to get a copy, right? Anyone who has that copy of the key is going to be able to do the same things as the person who holds that master key. So this API key follows that user around. So the EnergyCAP role of the creator is also represented by the API key. Whatever topmost permissions the creator has, those are carried forward into the API key. And it's important to note that any changes that happen to the user that created the API key, those permissions or those changes will also be reflected if you use the API key. So let's say that I have a user and a password and I create an API key and I start using that to access EnergyCAP's APIs. If my permissions change, if I lose permissions, if I'm granted additional permissions, maybe my topmost changes, or I'm inactivated as a user, all of those changes will instantly apply to an API key as well. Everything follows along. Whatever happens to the creator of the API key also is reflected by anyone using the API key. So the process is very straightforward for creating these. This is a new feature that was available just recently in EnergyCAP. You can go to the system settings menu, select API keys and webhooks, create a brand new API key, and you can see a little wizard that walks you through the process. I'm going to show that to you in just a minute. When you're creating an API key, first off, who's allowed to do this? Well, it's available to anyone who has permission to view and manage application settings. So the specific permission that you're looking for in EnergyCAP is anyone with application settings view, they can create an API key. When you create an API key, you need to provide a unique name for it, and that helps you track the purpose or what it's being used for. API keys should be copied during the creation process and secured. EnergyCAP actually generates that. Once it's created and once it's provided to you during the creation process, there's no way to say, hey, can you show that to me again? That's part of the security model to keep it safe. So you get it during the creation process, you need to store it in a safe place. You're not going to be able to retrieve it again. However, if for some reason you need to get rid of it, maybe it was lost, or for some reason you want to deactivate it, API keys can be revoked or deleted by an administrator at any time. And the permission that's needed for that is application settings managed. That's the EnergyCAP permission tied to revoking or deleting an API key. And like I mentioned before, if the user who created the API key becomes inactive, the API key becomes inactive too. So that's a safeguard. If you have a user who, maybe it's an employee who's working for you and they leave the company, if you inactivate that user in EnergyCAP, any API keys created by that user will also become inactive. Let me take a moment and show you what this process is like in EnergyCAP. So here I'm logged into EnergyCAP version 7. And as I mentioned, down here in the system settings menu, there's a new option for API keys and webhooks. From this screen, you can both create API keys as well as webhooks. We're going to talk about webhooks next. Let's walk through the process of creating an API key. There is a link here off to developer.energycap.com in case one of your developers would like to get additional information about the process. So as I mentioned, you want to provide a unique name to your API key so that you can easily identify it and distinguish it from others that you may create. So in this case, I'm going to create an API key for importing interval data. And we're going to give it a description as well. And I'm going to hit save. So as I mentioned, it's really important that if you're creating an API key that you copy it at this point in the process, because this is the only time when EnergyCAP is going to show you this API key. So here it is. It actually goes on well beyond what I can see here, but I can click copy and I can paste that into another application or into some place that I can keep this API key secured in the same way that I would want to keep a password secured. Once that API key is created, you can see here at the top, we have a table full of API keys. As an administrator, you can see API keys that have been created by other users. And as I mentioned, you can delete an API key at any point in time. If for some reason you lost the API key as an example, simply delete it, and then you can create another one to replace it. Let's switch back to our presentation. Additional API key resources are available on developer.energycap.com. Similar to our Getting Started guide, we have information there to help developers understand how EnergyCAP API keys can be created and how they're used to authenticate with the EnergyCAP API platform. So we've just taken a look at how you can use API keys to easily access and secure your EnergyCAP data. Next, let's talk about webhooks. And we're going to talk about how you can subscribe to EnergyCAP webhooks to automate your tasks and your workflow. So what is this term I'm using? What are webhooks? Well, webhooks are automatic notifications that are sent to you or to some server when a certain action happens within EnergyCAP. And I use this logo here because webhooks are not unique to EnergyCAP. This is a very common logo. You might actually see this if you're out on the internet. This is the logo that is typically used to indicate a webhook. Webhooks are widely used methods across the internet for being notified that something important has happened. And in fact, whether you know it or not, some of the systems and tools that you use are probably using webhooks under the covers in order to provide you with instant data or updates. So for instance, Microsoft Office 365 uses webhooks to provide notifications when documents have been updated. And Dropbox uses webhooks to identify when files have been shared or viewed or deleted. So these things happen when the action is taken, a webhook is automatically fired. You don't need to poll regularly looking for updates. That was kind of what we used to do in the past. When we weren't sure if something changed, what you would have to do is just hit the system over and over again and say, is there anything new? Is there anything new? Is there anything new, right? Webhooks totally changed the paradigm. So instead of having to actively wake up and go ask if there's anything new, you subscribe to the events that matter to you, and the system will tell you when that particular action occurs. You don't need to do any processing in between. You can simply wait and get a notification. So let's take the idea of webhooks and let's transfer it into the real world. So in the middle of our response to this pandemic, right, when things first started shutting down, if you were like many of us, you probably found that toilet paper was a hot commodity and it was hard to find. And one approach to trying to find toilet paper, as an example, would be calling Target daily to see if Charmin is in stock, right? That was something that we may have done, all of us would have done, to see, hey, is it there? Do you have any today? Should I come in? Should I bother making the trip? That's like the system of old days where we used to just continually ask, pick up the phone and say, do you have it? Tomorrow I call, do you have it? But with webhooks, we flip that paradigm on its head. And it's like telling Target, hey, let me know when you have Charmin in stock. And when Target receives that pallet of Charmin, they send you a notification or they call you and say, your item is ready, right? And a lot of things have transferred to this model. If you think about maybe getting a notification when a prescription is ready for a pickup instead of you having to call and check if it's ready. That's some of the ways that these types of technology are being used in the physical space. Now, let's go back into EnergyCAP world and talk about the way you can use this new type of paradigm to help automate your own process. So if we think about some of the workflows that you deal with on a regular basis, typically one event leads to another, which may lead to another. So you can subscribe to events that matter to you. And here we've provided a list of the EnergyCAP webhook events that are currently available. And we plan to expand this list over time, but we realize that these are some of the most critical ones that people care about, that they want to be notified. So we will tell you when an account is created, or we can tell you when someone exports bills to an AP or a GL system, or maybe when they reverse an export that's already occurred. We can tell you when bills have been created, edited, when they're analyzed and reportable, when they're fully processed, and we can even identify if it's an outlier. All of that information you can subscribe to. We can tell you when buildings have been created or meters have been created. And we even have a special type that is really helpful when you have maybe a manual step in your workflow that then triggers something else downstream. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. We call that our custom bill action. This is an example of what you fill out when you create a webhook. Similar to API keys, you give it a name, a unique identifier. And typically, this is meant to tell people what is the thing downstream that is going to accept or take action on this webhook. So in this particular case, when this webhook fires, there's something that's going to add this EnergyCAP building to a facility system that's downstream. You can provide a description, a list of email addresses of people who should be notified if for some reason this doesn't work. Maybe the system downstream is offline and EnergyCAP cannot get the message to them. You choose the type of event that you want to listen for or the event that you care about, and then you tell EnergyCAP, where should I send this message? And again, you may not know the answer to this, but your developers will. So what can you do with a webhook message? Well, here are some examples that we've already seen in the real world. You could run a script. So here's an example. When a bill is created, run an audit that I have defined and flag the bill if it fails it. You can use a webhook to send an email. So you could do something like whenever someone exports bills to GL, email Stephanie. So no longer does Stephanie need to check in with people and find out if it's happened, she'll automatically get an email. You could use a webhook to kick off another type of event like an automation downstream. So whenever a building's created, save the EnergyCAP building information in my facility management system. So maybe you're creating the building here, but you want to make sure that EnergyCAP's identifiers get passed along to some other facility management system that you're using. You could use it to trigger running a report. So maybe whenever bills are created, run the outliers report, report 13, and email the report to Francis for review. So Francis doesn't need to go in and run that report on a regular basis. The webhook could then start some process that's going to run the report for Francis. And finally, if you're hosted within EnergyCAP's environment, you're part of an EnergyCAP platform, you can trigger automation within our environment for you. So an example here is whenever someone exports bills to AP, automatically reformat the file and send the results to some email address. So we have some additional functionality that we've built within our own environment to accept these webhooks and then take some of the actions like what you see here on the screen. So where can you send webhooks? Well, you can send them to software integration packages. Maybe you have a package that you already run within your organization that accepts things like webhooks. You can have custom services built for you by a development team that's waiting for a webhook from EnergyCAP to arrive. There are public services built for webhooks, some common ones. If this, then that. You may have heard of that before. It's a common platform for saying, once this event happens, then I want you to take these types of actions. Microsoft has services, Google has services, as I mentioned before, Dropbox and other services can automatically accept webhook events and then take some type of an action. And as I mentioned before, EnergyCAP has a suite of tools available within our hosted platform that we can use to help our clients take automated action. I mentioned a special type of webhook called custom bill action webhook. This is really a unique opportunity that's available because instead of waiting for something that might automatically happen within your database, this can be triggered by a user very specifically. And the way it works is from a bill list, you select one bill or a collection of bill or maybe the entire bill list, and then you can take an action from a menu that's right there. This is fully integrated into EnergyCAP's bill list functionality. And it's really useful for special bill auditing or data validation or maybe some type of custom action that your organization needs to take. Again, the name of this webhook is custom bill action. And when you create a webhook like this, it's automatically added to the dropdown in bill list for users who are authorized for that type of an action. And I'm going to show you an example of that right now. So we're going to switch back to EnergyCAP. We've already created an API key. Now we're going to follow this flow at the bottom to create a webhook. As I mentioned before, you need to provide a unique name for your webhook, and that should indicate to someone who's looking at it, what's the next thing that's going to happen when this action occurs? So we're going to call this one Flag Historic Bills. And our description here is to flag bills with a start date less than 180 days in the past. I guess I should say greater than, greater than 180 days in the past. So there's some process outside of EnergyCAP that's going to examine a bill, and if it finds that it's an older bill, it's going to take some type of an action with it. You specify then who should receive an email. If this were to fail, you can add one or more people. They can be EnergyCAP users, or they could be just email addresses that you add here. And then you choose what is the event that happens in EnergyCAP that should trigger this action. As I mentioned, these are the same events that were in the presentation. Account could be created, maybe a bill's created or edited, In this particular case, I'm going to use this special action that I talked about called custom bill action. And then this URL is where should the webhook be sent? Where should this message go when it is sent from EnergyCAP? Again, your software developer will give you this information. I happen to have a server that's ready and waiting to receive these types of webhook events from EnergyCAP. So now you can see I had an API key that I created before, and I can see my webhooks here as well. I can see if the webhooks are active. I can make them inactive if for some reason I want to stop processing. I can also use these screens to do some diagnoses. If a webhook is failing, I can dig into some of the reasons behind that. I'm going to close out of this. So this webhook was created, and it's sitting in the EnergyCAP database. Whether you have one or many of these, they're just sitting there waiting for particular events to occur. Now, the custom bill actions, as I mentioned, are available from the bill list. So here I'm going to come to a bill list, and I'm just going to select a few bills from the list. And when I look at my available actions at the top of the screen, you'll notice that something has been automatically added to my list of available actions. This header, custom bill actions, was automatically added when I added this webhook. And now that webhook name that I provided, flag historic bills, shows up right here. So this is what's so powerful. You can create this action or this event, and the description of the event, the name of the event, they all appear right here for users, and they can choose which bills they want to pass off to this event down the line. So when I select that, I get a little prompt that says that I'm about to trigger the flag historic bills action on however many bills I've selected. In this case, I've selected 3 bills. And that description that I provided is available here. So this is a really helpful tool to increase the transparency within your team, to help people understand what they're doing, or maybe if there's a next step that they need to take, you can provide that in the description as well. And when I hit continue, instantly, that message is sent to that webhook, to the receiver of that webhook. So this message is being sent to that server, and I can see here that it was triggered successfully. So in this particular case, these 3 bills were passed off to this external system, separate from EnergyCAP, that's sitting there waiting to catch events and then take some type of an action. And if I go back into my webhooks, I can see the status of this webhook. I can see that it is working. We've had success messages. I can see who triggered the event in the application. That's the name of my user right now that I'm logged in with, software developer. I can see if it was successful or not. And for developers, you can go in and see the specific details of the messages that were sent. You can see the header information, the body, the response that we received back as well from whomever we sent the webhook to. So all of those details are integrated here within the webhooks feature. And in this particular case, again, I created the custom bill action so that I could do something from a bill list. And it's very visible to the user that they want to take this particular action. And those custom bill actions are available in all of the bill lists throughout EnergyCAP. That's just one example of how you can use webhooks, but really sky's the limit. You can send information to a system that'll receive it, and as I mentioned before, that system might send emails, it might trigger off reports, it might start some accounting system process downstream. Lots of different options for ways that you can use webhooks to automate your workflow. And as I mentioned before, software is king, right? The ability to do this enables us to do more with our time and be more productive and not have to waste time maybe checking to see if some event has occurred. Instead, let's let EnergyCAP tell us about that event when it does occur. Similar to when we talked about our APIs, additional details about webhooks are available at developer.energycap.com. So if your developers want to know more about how EnergyCAP's webhook infrastructure is configured, send them to developer.energycap.com. So we've talked about API keys, and now we've talked about how you can subscribe to EnergyCAP's webhooks to automate your tasks and workflow. I wanted to give you some examples to let you know that this isn't some type of beta software. What we're talking about with EnergyCAP's APIs are fully baked, tested, fully integrated APIs. And as I mentioned, they support the entire EnergyCAP platform, the system that you log into with a username and password. And there are many organizations that are already using EnergyCAP's developer tools to simplify and enhance their processes. As an example, just over the past 12 months, clients who have systems with EnergyCAP using our APIs have created over 20,000 buildings. So these are over 20,000 buildings that were created not with anyone logging into EnergyCAP. They were not created with a setup spreadsheet in EnergyCAP. These were created by a software product that somebody built, and they're sending these buildings into EnergyCAP. So over 20,000 buildings created just within the last 12 months. We've had over 350,000 meters created in the last 12 months. We've had interval data imported over 24,000 times. And in this case, this is a whole collection of interval data that's being brought in with every one of those submissions. Comes to bills, we've had over 5.6 million bills created in EnergyCAP using the EnergyCAP API platform in just the last 12 months. As I mentioned, this is a fully functioning system, and we want you to take advantage of it. We want you to be able to use it to its fullest. As I mentioned, many clients are using these tools, and they've been using our SDKs, they've been using our APIs, they've been using our API keys and webhooks. They've done things like creating facilities, meters, and accounts based on external systems. Maybe they have some other system where they already have created building data, and they just want to push that data into EnergyCAP, or maybe it's metering data that they want to push into EnergyCAP. They can do that through APIs. We have clients who are importing interval data on a regular basis from their metering systems. In some cases, this is 15-minute imports that are coming in through our APIs into EnergyCAP, continually feeding the data into the system. Some of our clients are using our APIs to automatically configure and run reports. They're actually changing the filters on reports and then sending those reports all through APIs. Maybe it's a monthly process that they have. They're doing all of this on their own. And we have some tools in EnergyCAP that will allow them to do some of those things without having to build it, but at least the options are available. They can decide how they want to do it based on what works best for their organization. We have clients who are exporting data to custom charting tools that they're using. We have many clients that are using this to import bills on a regular basis. And we even have clients who are developing custom mobile applications using EnergyCAP's APIs. So as I mentioned, this isn't new. This has been around for several years, and many organizations have already taken advantage of this, taken advantage of EnergyCAP's developer tools to simplify and enhance their processes. And finally, I want to talk for just a minute about how EnergyCAP's APIs and our software tools continue to evolve and improve over time. This chart shows the number of available APIs that EnergyCAP has made available through our API platform since the launch of EnergyCAP version 7. In fact, in less than 3 years, we've added over 400 additional APIs. Because as I said before, when we add APIs to make the application more robust, to add functionality, to add new features, those APIs also become available to all the software developers and third-party software developers that are using our system. So in less than 3 years, we've added over 400 new capabilities that are available for software developers to use through our API platform. And I can tell you, we're not done. This is going to continue to expand and grow and become more useful and helpful to you and other organizations over time. We continue to expand our API functionality. This year, just within the last 4 months, we've added API keys as new functionality. We've added webhooks as new functionality as well. And we plan to expand that functionality more in the future. As I mentioned, we have an initial set of webhook events. We plan to extend that to even more events in the upcoming releases. Our API documentation is actively maintained. With every one of our releases, our API documentation is updated, new APIs are added, descriptions may be modified. We add additional information to be more helpful to software developers. Coming soon, you're going to see, as I mentioned early in the presentation, API versioning with clear deprecation and support timeframes. What do I mean by this? Well, some of the functions that we've had available, even within the 3 years that we've been working with EnergyCAP version 7, we have some things that we've come up with some new and better ways to do. So what we're going to be doing is taking an API and making a new version of it. It does a similar function, but maybe the requirements for what you need to pass into it, or maybe what we're passing out, will be different. So what we'll do is actually mark that as a new API. We will keep the old version of it around for some period of time, but let everyone know, hey, this older version of this API is going away. That's what we mean by deprecation. And we're also going to let people know, let your software developers know how long we're going to support that old version of the API before it goes away. We anticipate having some of these new version APIs available within the first few months of, so you can let your software developers know that our APIs will not be all version 3 in the new year. Some of them are actually going to advance beyond that, and we're actually changing our numbering scheme. Instead of being version 4, we're actually going to put a date with the APIs to let you know when it changed. That'll help you and your software developers know if maybe they took advantage of that API because it was around when they developed their tools, or maybe it's something that changed more recently than what they developed. We're also going to be adding additional API testing options for your developers for pre-release APIs. So as things, before they've been released to production, we're going to be providing some more options in the near future so that people can test with newer versions of our APIs before they're even released to production. So those are a couple of features that are going to be coming in 2021. Keep an eye out for it. We'll continue to update you with notifications as well as release notes and other things like maybe additional webinars in 2021. So we've covered a lot. As we mentioned at the beginning, EnergyCAP's developer tools really do make it easy to enhance your utility bill processing and business workflows. We've created a collection of tools that are well documented. They can be extended to integrate with your environment. We've created tools like API keys to make authentication and programming easier. We've released things like SDKs, software development kits, in order to make the processing or the creation of extra tools easier for software developers. We've added webhooks so that instead of having to check back with EnergyCAP on a regular basis, we can tell you or your systems when a particular type of an event has occurred. There are lots of people who've already dove in to the pool and they are already using these features in production, and they've automated steps in their workflow process, whether they've done it on their own or maybe they've worked with us to have us help them with that process. And we're not done yet. We're continuing to expand our APIs. We will continue to do that for years to come, as well as provide additional tooling to make it even easier and more make it even more of a self-guided process for software developers. I want to mention that all the features that I've discussed here today, including API keys as well as webhooks, all of those features are available to EnergyCAP hosted clients, people that we host within our data center, as well as EnergyCAP on-premises clients. Both the latest version of what's available for on-premises clients as well as what we're running live in production, both of those sets of versions of the application support everything that I talked about today. That was a mouthful, but I've been watching on the side. I know that our team's been going through and looking at questions as you've submitted them. And maybe if you haven't had an opportunity to submit a question and there's something you're thinking about, please go ahead and submit that through the GoToMeeting tool. We'll answer a few of those right now before we wrap up. Look at that. I saw a bunch of notes, but the notes said, hey, there's not a whole lot that's going on right now in terms of questions. So I'll wait here for another minute. If we don't have any questions, then we'll wrap up. All right, I'm not seeing anything come in. So I just want to summarize by saying thank you again for taking the time to go through all of these options with us today. We really sincerely hope that you and your organizations are navigating these unusual times safely. Please know that we're here to help. If there are things that we can do to enhance your EnergyCAP experience, please reach out to our teams. We're happy to assist with those. And we hope that by seeing some of these areas that we are developing and some of the latest developer tools that we've been publishing, that maybe you've gotten a new or a fresh idea for how you can integrate some of the things that you do every day with EnergyCAP in ways that may save you time and energy and be smarter along the way as well. So thanks again for joining us today. Take care.